안녕하십니까? 오늘 여기에 참석하게 되어 영광입니다.
Great.
That was a better response than I was expecting. I will now proceed in English since I've embarrassed myself with my poor Korean already. But welcome to Generative AI and Insurance, practical lessons for deployment of secure, effective, and resilient AI systems. You have the pleasure of listening to your second actuary speak for the day. Dr. Andrews did her job of raising the bar for actuaries, so I'll try to do my part as well. Before I dive in, I'd like to share just a little bit about myself. I'm a practicing actuary with a traditional actuarial background in the P&C space. I manage Milliman's property and casualty practice based in Denver, Colorado, USA. And I've been with Milliman for just over 20 years now. I started when I was an intern in university, and I'm now a principal leading that practice and as the AI representative on our P&C strategic committee. On the right side of the screen, you'll see a photo of my family. That's my wife and my two sons. We're at a Special Olympics event in Denver. This was just a couple weeks ago. And we actually pulled that plane that you see behind us. We pulled it with a rope along with about 20 other people, not by ourselves. But my youngest son on the left-hand side of that photo is autistic. And like my older son, he inspires me every day with his determination, his creativity, his sense of humor. And I share this not just because I'm proud of them, but also because it reminds me of what AI systems should be and why I do what I do at work. And that's about fairness, inclusion, and enabling all of us to reach our full potential. And those values are important in sports, which is what the Special Olympics represents, but they're also critical in insurance. So hopefully we can keep those in mind as we develop AI systems responsibly for our organizations and our industry. Today I hope to provide you with some valuable insights from a practitioner's perspective. I'll point to some real-world examples of projects that we've led both internally at Milliman and for client engagements. Milliman is a consulting firm, so our clients are insurance companies or large corporations that retain their insurance liabilities. So we'll dive into a couple of those. I've included this quote here. We can only see a short distance ahead, but we can see plenty needs to be done. This is from Alan Turing, often referred to as one of the forefathers of machine learning and artificial intelligence. I think this quote is as relevant today in 2025 as it was 75 years ago in 1950. And that's the spirit I'd like to carry through this presentation. This is exciting, but it's unfinished, and it requires careful stewardship to guide it effectively and fairly. So what are we going to speak about today? First, I'll run a high-level overview. Some of these themes that I'm going to cover, some of our other speakers today covered quite well, so I'll try not to be redundant. Hopefully some of what I say reinforces some of those and maybe provides a slightly different perspective on some of those topics. But we'll talk about unlocking value with AI. We'll talk explicitly about the two case studies. How to evaluate and maintain AI systems, I think, is a critical kind of consideration as you're thinking about developing them and deploying them. If I have time, I'll get into some of the ways we think about managing risk from AI systems, not managing risk with AI, but managing the new risks or the legacy risks that AI kind of reignites. But I do have a lot of material, so I'm not sure I'm going to have a lot of time for that one. And then if we have time for that, we'll do some Q&A. But without further ado, let's jump into unlocking value. So the Gen AI journey, there's several kind of frameworks you can look at this within. Here I've got kind of a complexity spectrum. On the left, the first kind of step into your Gen AI journey is prompt engineering. If any of you have tailored your input into ChatGPT, congratulations, you're a prompt engineer. You can put that on your resume now. But this is the simplest way to steer models for the output you want. Next up is context engineering. And this is a bit more involved. It's about the knowledge that you give the AI model to provide a response, right? Common implementations of this would be retrieval augmented generation, where you give a large language model a curated knowledge base to which it can respond to your questions from. This can also manifest in the aspect of multimodal is another example, right? Make sure the system considers the image you provided along with the text either embedded in that image or provided separately, right? So this is how you engineer the context that the model is going to use to respond. Beyond that is fine-tuning. This is how the model is specialized, right? This is quite technical and refined step up of complexity, going from the context engineering to fine-tuning. But it can often be one where a lot of value is gained. Fine-tuning is most often applied in the case of either small language models or small vision models. Actually, one of the examples that I'm going to give today is the small vision model being fine-tuned. And it can really allow an organization to build a model or a tool with impressive domain-specific capabilities, right? We want to hone in on what we know and where we can provide value. And when I say we, I mean us as individuals and professionals and also as organizations. And then lastly on this journey is pre-training, training a Gen AI model from scratch. I don't think that's a valuable use of an insurance company's time. We need to rely on the tech behemoths to do this. But we do need to be able to leverage those models for our benefit. But those foundational models will be kind of in the realm of another industry. So most insurers right now, and this goes very much to what Christian was explaining, are kind of in these first two steps, prompt engineering and context engineering, and how they're deploying AI systems. I really think the target should be on these central two steps, context engineering and fine-tuning. This is where I think the skill sets at our organizations are well suited. They may be incomplete. I do agree with him that there's still a skills gap, and I don't think it's anywhere near as close as the executives kind of said that they're over half of them are adequately skilled. I don't think that's I think that's optimistic. Let's put it that way. But I think these can really increase product offerings, day-to-day operations. It's kind of the sweet spot that they were talking about efficiency and operational gains. Lastly on here, I think it's important to note that agentic AI is a hot buzzword right now. It doesn't fit into any one of these buckets, right? It can be deployed at any stage of this journey, but it's kind of the orchestration of the AI system and how to gauge that. So another way to think of this journey is how we can leverage AI to improve the things we do, right? So there's this big block of things that humans do today, right? That's represented by the blue square here. There's a big overlapping block of things AI will do or AI can do. So these are the operational efficiency gains and that type of thing. Most of this is AI operating at speed and scale that humans just cognitively aren't able to do. But I think the interesting box and what I'd encourage you to start thinking towards is that things that humans and AI will do, right? That can't be done by either individually, right? So humans excel at judgment and decision making. Oftentimes those can be biased or flawed as well, as Dr. Andrews pointed out. But when we combine that with kind of the speed and the processing of AI systems, I think that's where true value can be unlocked. Here's a graphic that's an extremely brief overview of the insurance value chain. At the bottom, we've got our support activities, right? Management, IT, HR, controlling. A lot of effort in insurance is being directed towards improving efficiencies there. Really, that's agnostic to the industry you're in. Those kind of developments and tools should be happening in all industries right now. So I kind of consider that table stakes to AI deployment. Not to say it shouldn't be done and it shouldn't be a focus. Sometimes that's a low risk, low hanging fruit place to enter into that kind of deployment. But again, I think where value and insurance is really going to be added are in those primary activities. And so, again, that's where interactions with customers, automation of the business processes, and changing the risk landscape can kind of be achieved through AI systems. And the context, again, the application of those is what's often referred to as narrow AI. So that's AI developed to solve one particular solution in a targeted way. We may come to a day when we have an agentic AI model straddling the entire organization that can take inputs from marketing and apply them to product development and that type of thing. But I think we're a ways off on that, and for now, companies should kind of focus on this narrow and targeted AI. So here's another way of looking at that. Value is created when our professional expertise combines with the generated or dedicated technology applied to targeted tasks, right? Professional expertise, talking about our insurance knowledge, our knowledge of how the industry works, how our companies work, not necessarily technology, although a base level of that understanding is critical here. That's why we're all here today. Gen AI technology is becoming ubiquitous. If it's not already, it's pretty easy for organizations to obtain. The targeted tasks, I think, is where strategy and focus is really critical to make sure we're not just, here, fix something with AI, the shiny tool syndrome. I have that later in my presentation as well. I don't know if that translates, but there's a saying in the US that when all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Right? And so if you think of AI as the hammer, you're going to start hitting things that aren't nails, and you're going to break them or not do any benefit for the situation. So that golden point is really in the center there. So now let's take a look at two of our use cases. So case study one, and this is kind of squarely in that operational efficiencies area. There is a little bit of new product development and one of the flavors of this. But we're building an AI chatbot that answers difficult questions to assist our Milliman professionals and our clients. So these tools, we iterated on this kind of framework. We built one for legal compliance, one for actuarial guidance, and then a slightly different application was rate and product filing intelligence. And just a brief moment on that last one. The first two are kind of self-explanatory, but that last one, the intention here was to build a tool that could scrape public filings in the US, publicly available information, and compile a list of frequent reasons for objections or disapproval of those filings. And the intention there is to figure out why filings are being disproved or why they're not being approved by insurance regulators, and figure out how, and help our clients kind of develop their filings in a manner that would avoid those common pitfalls. So that one was a little bit different, but the lessons learned here, data is key. I don't think any of these are necessarily surprises to folks. Data is key. If anyone's done any modeling at all, you know, garbage in, garbage out. Poor data is going to result in poor results. The difference here is I'll contrast kind of the legal compliance and actuarial guidance. Those two have fairly stable data sets that don't change rapidly over time. Certainly laws change and you need to be on top of that, but it's not kind of a day-to-day, week-to-week thing. So a lot of the effort in that data compilation, processing, preparation is spent up front. And then once you have the model calibrated, you may need to refresh that information from time to time, but it's pretty stable. However, on the rate and product filing intelligence, that was a constant refresh of data, right? So there was a lot of effort up front to calibrate the model, but then there was continuous effort that was required by the organization as we moved forward to kind of maintain that product. So whether or not your organization has those resources is a key consideration if you decide to go down a product development or a service development like that. The second bullet point here, and this is pretty straightforward, use the most powerful foundational LLM available, right? We're using retrieval augmented generation, which takes a foundational model and points it towards a curated data set in this example. There is a time to kind of iterate on that. Do we want to use GPT-5 or do we want to use maybe an open source model that will be more cost effective? But in those initial stages of development, use the most powerful model available. We initially did the legal compliance chatbot when GPT 3.5 was the latest available to us. Right? As soon as 4 became available and we integrated that into the model, into the API calls, the model performance jumped. It was a step upwards, right? So using that, at least initially, is best practice. Always keep a human in the loop. You've heard that several times today, and I'm going to go into it later, so I'll keep moving. Shouldn't be overlooked. The fourth one, build an extendable framework, right? So you might be building a chatbot, but don't stop thinking about it there. That chatbot can produce perhaps documents used for your internal documentation of the decisions it makes or it recommends. Have it consider whether it should fit into an agentic AI system. Also, if you're building a framework like a chatbot, think about being intentional about the framework you build, because once you have that set up, you can kind of drop different corpuses of data or domain-specific information, and you can replicate that, right? One chatbot, one RAG-powered chatbot, once you have that framework set up, can easily be another one on a different set of information or different domain-specific knowledge. And lastly, be thoughtful and involved with any outside resources brought in to assist. Christian just spoke on this, that partnership between a vendor and the organization that's ultimately going to own the tool, own the processes, we found is critical. How do you kind of strike that right balance between building it yourself? Insurance companies, actuaries are very guilty of that. We always want to build it ourselves. But there are instances when we're just not the best skilled or most suited to do that. At Milliman, we've partnered with Microsoft. Microsoft is even partnering with smaller tech firms that are more specialized, right? So when a company like Microsoft can swallow their pride and bring in someone else, I think us as insurance companies should be willing to do the same. So that leads kind of right into the build versus buy decision, and Terry had a slide on this earlier. This is a slightly different application of that, but these are kind of the questions that we encourage our clients to consider when they're making this decision. You know, taking a step back, is AI the right tool for the job, right? Do we have the data right? Have we made the investments in data that we would need to make this effective? What type of problem are we solving? Is this a core business, the differentiator that makes our company, our organization valuable? Or is it a support function? Is it HR? Is it accounting? Not that those are not important and kind of build the foundation of your company, but like I said, using AI for that is kind of becoming table stakes at this point. And while there may be off-the-shelf solutions for some of those because they are replicable kind of across organizations and even industries at times, my belief is that these tailored solutions are needed for your core businesses. Evaluate your organizational skill set. Can we upskill our employees? Do we need to hire people? Or should we bring in an outside vendor? These are important considerations, right? Christian said, again, I think it may have been mentioned a couple times today, you cannot become an expert in AI overnight, right? This is a complex subject matter. There are important considerations for architecting, deploying, managing, maintaining these systems that you can't expect your underwriter or your actuary to automatically or to quickly, effortlessly learn while they have another job to do. And then the fourth kind of pillar here is optimize value and mitigate risks, right? You need to move fast on some of this stuff if you want to get ahead. Obviously, the insurance company is not, or insurance industry is not always the first mover, but to gain a real advantage, speed is your friend. But also, are you sacrificing quality for that? And if you move too slow, are you even outpacing the foundational models, right? When you're building a RAG chatbot, is GPT-6 already going to know that information? Is there a reason to be building this tool? So have a purpose and have a target. You know, this goes back to a slide, a targeted task for this is critical. And then how do we ensure also that people are going to use it, right? You can develop a wonderful tool, but if your stakeholders aren't going to embrace it and use it, then no value is going to come from that. In fact, it's going to destroy value. And so for that, you know, encouraging building may, or building it, or at least playing a role in building these systems may foster that buy-in. That's what we've seen, partnering with our clients on these engagements. It's really been the most beneficial when they have an active role in it, as do we, and are able to add value to their existing skill sets. So my second use case here, automated claims processing using computer vision, right? So we're taking unstructured data in the format of a large set of PDF documents for a creditor insurer. This is in Europe. And we're using AI to determine if the right documentation is in place so that compensation can be determined, and determining that we have all the information we need. So we're trying to extract signatures, identify an ID card and extract the name, and then find the letter of payment to determine the amount unpaid and the amount due. So in this example, we took a look at two approaches, and kind of the takeaways, or one of the takeaways is illustrated in that radar map in the center. First is a pre-trained model, right? This is taking a multimodal vision model. We use GPT, and you know, we knew this wasn't going to be sufficient, but it was unable to identify key information. Experts in their field can really identify kind of the weaknesses of these pre-trained models. So to address these, we tried two different approaches. First, and this on the right side in green, was context engineering using a pre-trained model. We got decent results with this. An advantage of this is the initial resources were minimal, but there are ongoing costs, right? You are using we were using an OpenAI model, so there's a cost every time you call that API, and less flexibility, right? You can't identify things in the same manner, train it on the specific domain knowledge set of the way that your client or your organization's information is coming in. And so with that, there was less accuracy. What we landed on was fine-tuning a small language vision model, more control and customization, but at the expense of more resources and more development time, right? They hired us. Milliman is not cheap. So we spent a fair amount of our resources working with them to develop this model. We had it up and running internally. Everything worked perfectly. We delivered it to the client, so of course it did not work. There was an issue with the way the information was flowing in and out of the model. There was a data flow issue. We partnered with them to get that corrected, and we're able to give them a good solution. But that, again, is that partnership and that build versus buy. And then they're able to kind of gain that knowledge, that inside working knowledge of the model at the same time. Okay, I'm running out of time quickly, but evaluating and maintaining AI systems. AI use guiding principles, right? So have this in mind. There are some very common themes across jurisdiction, right? And the flavors of how these are implemented or how these are kind of defined they do vary a bit, but really these key tenets, fair and ethical, accountable, transparent, safe, secure, and robust, and compliant with existing law can be found in all of them, right? So developing a system really needs to hit on these 5 issues. So what we have learned at Milliman, pillars of building these trustworthy AI systems that are both effective and compliant. First is what I call evaluation-led development. And so that is from the beginning of the development of your tool, of your AI system, make sure that you're evaluating it along the way. By doing this, you're embedding robustness and resilience. You are testing early and often. And then, another way to think of this is evaluation isn't a final check that comes at the end, right? It's a design from the start. And by doing that way, you'll kind of avoid some costly errors around the way. The second is privacy by design. Compliance and data protection need also to be embedded from the start. If you are not doing that and trying to bolt it on at the end, you're going to fall short. So, this is done through efforts like data minimization, embedded rules, anonymization. All of these things need to be in place from the start. And then third, again, human-in-the-loop accountability. This will ensure oversight and responsibility. You need to have defined points in your workflow where a human is going to check and verify that the system, whether it's algorithmic decision-making or just a suggestion for the humans to evaluate, has those kind of entry points. My last bullet point on this, AI is powerful, but humans remain responsible, right? And this leads to, you need to assign accountability, right? Named roles, the board of directors is responsible for this. The manager of this product owns this, right? These need to be assigned along the way. That'll ensure compliance and robustness. How do we do this evaluation? This is, that evaluation from the beginning. I won't get into all these, but there are automated techniques, LLM as a judge, where you're using essentially AI systems to judge AI systems and to check on it. Strength of these is once they're established, they can be scaled, right? You can start it early and then scale it up as your model grows and expands in scope. But then also the other side of this is adversarial and human testing. Red teaming, where you've got users kind of stress testing the model, trying to get it to break or produce a bad result. Expert validation, preference tending, again, the human in the loop. And also business outcomes, right? When you're evaluating these models, are they driving the results that you want, right? That's what the C-suite wants to know. They don't care if it's accurate 99% of the time on its RAG retrieval. They want to know, are we making money? So that is a key evaluation technique along the way. We'll maintain performance, minimizing drift. Model drift is not a new concept in modeling. There are some new risks that LLMs and Gen AI introduces that can result in some new cyber risks in a changing risk landscape. And then the last thing I want to hit on is just this concept of high risk versus low risk AI systems. High risk systems are going to be those that can have a significant impact. Low risk systems are going to support your operations and efficiencies, right? So I think that's a good entry point for most companies and where a lot of the industry is right now. And when we're talking about compliance and best practices, obligations for high-risk systems are really best practices for low risk. So you might be required to do it on a high risk. You should still be doing it even on a low risk system. So I think I'm out of time. I'm sorry I did not leave any time for Q&A, but if you'd like to chat with me afterwards, please come find me.
Okay, thank you very much for the wonderful presentation. With that, that is end of his presentation. Thank you.